Welcome to my third video of ASA firewall. So since last video we have discussed how to configure ASA firewall, why we use ASA firewall. Sorry, first class we have discussed what is ASA, why we use ASA, what is basic difference between stateful and stateless. Then we have already discussed about that how to configure ASA firewall, how to assign IP on ASA, how to check IP, how to check interface. So this thing which have what is the security level, what do you mean by security zone. So this thing we have already discussed in the last two lecture. So today we will discuss, as I told in the last class, today I will discuss what, suppose that this is my ASA, this is my inside network, this is my outside network, right? So today I will discuss the basic rules, right? The basic rules which is already allowed in the firewall. Suppose this is my router 1, this is my router 2, this is my firewall. Okay, so in today's class we will discuss what the basic thing is already allowed on the firewall. So by default rule of the firewall is, if the any traffic which is coming from inside network going to outside network is allowed, it's allowed. What is my by default rule? My by default rule is, this is thing I already discussed in the last lecture, but let me again repeat. By default rule is, any traffic which is coming from the higher security level going to the lower security level zone is by default allowed. Again I repeat, a traffic which is coming from the higher security level and going to the lower security level by default is allowed. Means suppose if for my internal network my security level is suppose 100, and for the external network my security level is like 50. Okay, so by default the traffic which is coming from the R1 to R2 is allowed. Once the response come at the firewall, then firewall will check a inspection table, or you can say that state table, right? If there is any entry present in the inspection table or state table, then the firewall will allow the traffic, or otherwise firewall will deny the traffic. If, again I repeat, if inspection is present in the state table or inspection table, then firewall will allow the traffic, otherwise firewall will deny the traffic. So today we will discuss, this is by default rule, right? And the second by default rule is, if any traffic which is going to the going from the inside network to outside network, right? And the traffic type is TCP or UDP. Sorry, traffic type is TCP. Okay, then they will not inspect it. They will not inspect it. Means if the traffic which is coming from the higher security level going to the lower security level, that is by default allowed, right? That is by default allowed. Okay, but when the traffics, let me clear more. Suppose this is my router, okay, this is my firewall, and this is my another router, and this all are connected to each other. what is my first basic rules which we have studied till now is, by default, if any traffic is coming from higher security level HSL going towards the lower security level LSL, okay, is by default allowed. By default allowed. Okay. Now, if response, now I'm talking about the response. Response come back from lower security level to higher security level. Response come from lower security level to higher security level is, first of all, they will check inspection table, then they will check the ACL table and take decision accordingly, right? This thing which I have already discussed. Second thing I am going to add is, by default, which this thing I have already means seen, we have already seen in the last lecture. That thing I am going to discuss, like by default TCP packet is not. What do you mean by TCP packet is not inspected? Let me discuss. What is my first rule? If any traffic which is going from the higher security level to the lower security level is by default allowed. Okay. Suppose this traffic type is TCP. This traffic type is TCP, and they are sending TCP SYN packet. They are sending TCP SYN packet. Okay. Then R2 will respond as a with acknowledgement, right? Okay. Once the acknowledgement will come at the firewall, okay, what firewall will do? Firewall check the inspection table. What firewall do? Firewall will check the inspection table, because once the traffic will come from the lower security level to higher security level, they will check the inspection table. And there is by default entry, there is by default entry is no TCP inspection. What is the entry? No TCP inspection. And what do you mean by no TCP inspections? Means that if any traffic is coming from for the TCP, do not do the inspection. And then what firewall will do? Firewall will allow this traffic to happen. Rest except from TCP, except from TCP, all traffic must be inspected on the firewall, right? Let me clear the picture or traffic flow. This is sending TCP SYN packet, right? And by default rule is from higher security level to lower security level is traffic is allowed. Once the acknowledgement come at the firewall will, in this case also firewall will check inspection table. But by default, what is the entry in ASA firewall? By default, no TCP inspection. Firewall check this policy and they will forward the traffic to R1 back. So this is the two basics rules which we have to keep in mind. Okay. So before the creating rules, before we are going to the ACL and all the things, we need to discuss about the routing on ASA. Routing on ASA. Why we require routing on ASA? Because we have a two different network and we want to allow the traffic between the two different network. Why? Because this is my router 1, this is my firewall 1, and this is my router 2. Okay, so and this is connected with this, and this is connected with this. So between this and between this, both are in different networks. This is network 1, 10 IP, like suppose we are using 10 IP here, and this is network 2. So just to communicate between two different network, what we required is routing. So before creating policy and all, we required routing. Then we are going to start with routing. So you know about the CCNA, I think all are familiar. Are you familiar about the routing? Let me give me a second. So in CCNA routing and switching, we have a route type static and dynamic. I will not discuss anything regarding the routing here because I know you are aware about the routing. मैं यहाँ पे routing पढ़ाने नहीं आया बैठा हूँ. And second one is dynamic. Static route में there are another type static and default. We will study. We have studied, sorry, and default. And in dynamic routing, protocol is also divided into two parts, is IGP and second one is EGP. I am only give a summarized example of routing. Okay, IGP are again divided into three parts mainly: RIP, EIGRP, OSPF, and some where we have also seen ISIS. And in EGP we have only one router. Its monopoly router is known as BGP. Okay, and we know how to configure RIP, how to configure EIGRP, how to configure OSPF and ISIS. Okay, this is the layer 7 protocol, and these two are layer 3 protocol, and this is also a layer 7 protocol. Okay, so if you want to configure a route inside your network, then we will use IGP. And if we want to go the traffic which is from the inside to outside, means the I want to configure route between the networks, right? So in this case we use EGP. So suppose we have a router 1, we have a router 1, we have a router 2. Okay, what I am going to do, I'm going to directly start the practical and give the example of all the routings within a 15 to 20 minutes. First of all, what I will do, I will configure the routing on router. Once you will get to know the information how to configure routing on router, then I will configure routing on ASA. First of all, what we will do, we will configure how to configure routing on a router. Once we will done on the router, then we will check how to configure routing on ASA. कहाँ चला गया राउटर? नहीं लिया गया कोई राउटर? यहाँ पे राउटर इस गायब, कोई दिख नहीं रहा है राउटर। लिया था यार अभी, चलो मैं फिर से ले लेता हूँ। Not in template, cannot connect to compute GNS3 VM with the post project. एक मिनट देखना है। Okay, the issue was my GNS VM was not started previously. What we have done, we have just reset my VM network adapter. If you got a issue, what we can do, you have to disable first and then enable again. Then this GNS will work fine. अब आ जाओ। 4 राउटर मैंने पहले यूज़ कर रखा है क्या? वो तो 4 राउटर मुझे दिख नहीं रहा। कहाँ चला गया बाकी 4? चलो कोई नहीं। This is, suppose we have a 3 router R1, R2, R3. R1, R2, R3. All are connected to each other. Okay. What I am going to discuss? I am going to discuss routing on ASA. So before routing on ASA, I just want to give a summarization how to configure routing on router. Okay. Let's suppose we will use IP here to 56.1.1.5, and here we will use IP 56.1.1.6 and 67.1.1.6, and here we will use 67.1.1.7. So this is basically 4 IP, which if you want to draw the diagram, you can draw it. Okay, so before the routing, what we have to do, we have to configure IP addressing on all the interface. Configure terminal interface fast Ethernet 0/0 IP address 56.1.1.5 space to 55.0.0.0. Let me use class C IP to 55.255.0. So this is the issue actually. And then we have to write command no shutdown. Exit. And R6 here, configure terminal interface fast Ethernet 0 by 0 IP address is 56.1.1.6 space 255.255.255.0. Interface fast Ethernet 1 by 0. IP address 67.1.1.6 sorry 6 5.255.255. Configure terminal interface 67 sorry interface fast Ethernet 0 by 0 IP address 67.1.1.7 space 255.255.255.0. Now shut down. Let me check the IP which we have configured. So IP interface brief and exclude which we have not assigned. So at fast Ethernet 0 by 0 we have IP 67.1.1.7. Let me check on R6. Show IP by IP interface brief exclude unassign. So on fast Ethernet 0 by 0 we have a 56.1 IP and on fast Ethernet 1 by 0 we have a 67.1. Okay, and go to R5. Show IP interface brief exclude unassign. First of all, what we will do, we will configure a static route between this all the router. Then we let me ping first here from R5 to R7 like 67.1.1.7 mi not. We are not able to ping from R5 to R7 because both are in different network. I can ping from R5 to 56.1.1.6 but I can't ping 67.1.1.6 from R5 because both are in different network. This is my network 56.0.0.56.1.1.0. What is the network ID of this network? If we use class C subnet 56.1.1.0 and the network ID of this network will be 67.1.1.0. So the IP which is belong from the 56.1.1.0 they can communicate to each other, and the IP which is coming from the 67.1.1.0 they can communicate to each other. Means R7 can communicate 67.1.1.6, R5 can communicate 56.1.1.6, but R5 cannot communicate to R6 IP. That means the network which is from 67.1.1.0, same R7 cannot communicate with the IP the network which is coming from 56.1.1.0. Just to communication between these two different network, what we required routing. So in the routing first type, what we are going to do here, we are going to configure static routing. Okay, so how to configure static routing here? Go to in global configuration mode and write command IP route, and that is the indirectly connected network which is not connected to me. And in this case we have an indirectly connected network for R5 is R5 for 56 network, this is a directly to R5, right? But for 67 network this is indirectly to R5 because 67 network is not directly connected with R5. They are directly connected via R6 to R5. Okay, so what is indirectly connected network for R5 here? R5 के लिए indirectly connected network क्या हुआ? 67.1.1.0. Similarly, if I am talking about R7, what will be the indirectly connected network for R7 is 56.1.1.0. So what I am going to do here, at R5 I will route 67 networks, and at R7 I will route 56 network. How? See here, IP route 67.1.1.0, then subnet mask, then next hop IP. For R5 next hop IP is 56.1.1.6. 56.1.1.6. If you have any confusion till now, you can go and read from CCNA. Okay. And at R7 we have to write same command, configure terminal IP root 56.1.1.0 space to 55.0.0.0. Oh, and the next hop IP will be 67.1.1.6. We have used here class C IP. Let me ping from R5 to R7 67.1.1.7. Am I? Yes, we can ping now. So this is the thing we have configured here to static route between two different networks. Okay, let me delete this configuration. Till there any confusion? Delete the configuration first. Okay. Go to R7, configure terminal. Okay. Now try to ping from R5 to R7. Am I? Now we cannot ping because route is deleted. Now we are going to configure default route. In default route we don't require any specific destinations. We will write here IP route for any destination for any mask if the next hop will be 56.1.1.6 and traffic is routed. Okay, same command we have to write here also. This command we need to route on R7 also. No, there is nothing need to configure at R6 because R6 is directly connected with R5 and R7 both. So for R5 routing table we have a information of 56 network and 67 network. Let me clear, इसको configure कर लेते हैं. Now you can check ping 67.1.1.6. I am able to ping. देखो, why we not required to configure anything on R6 show IP route, because R5 is directly connected with 67 network and 56 network. So anything if R7 or R5 will send for the 56 and 67 network, they have information in the routing table because both are is directly connected. So there is no need to any routing configuration here for this. So this is the thing by which we configure default route. Let me delete it again. If you want, then you can note also. This is a summary explanation of all the routing. You can check here, ping 67.1.1.7. Am I able to ping? No. Chalo. Now we will configure the rip, not rip. We will directly configure EIGRP on OSPF, only two things. Then we will start how to configure routing on ASA. Configure at R5. What we have to how to configure means EIGRP, router EIGRP 100, and then we have to write command network 56.1.1.0 and exit. Same command we required to required in R7, and also go to in the global configuration mode, router, sorry, we have to write command this on R6 also, configure terminal router EIGRP 100 network 56.1.1.0 network 67.1.1.0. Go to the R7 router EIGRP 100 network 67.1.1.0. This is the basic command to enable EIGRP on a router. So you can check which neighbor is connected with me. So IP EIGRP neighbor. Okay. And if you require to details also, then you can also dig with the details. From 30 seconds my neighborship is up. Okay, same thing I want to check on R6 also. You need to check so IP EIGRP neighbor. There are two neighbor 67 and 56. Show IP EIGRP neighbor. And now I want to ping from R5 to R7. We have a route information also. So उसमें routing table नहीं दिखाया था ना, और sorry, इसमें देख लो, we have a routing table, routing information of indirectly network 67 network at R5, and this network information is coming from D means EIGRP. We have a dictionary, you can check here also. D means EIGRP. Okay. So this is the basic thing you have to keep in your mind. Now let me ping 67.1.1.7. Am I? Yes, you can ping it. Okay. So IP EIGRP. We have accounting, event, interface, timer, topology, traffic, VRF. You can check also. Like I will only show the interface. This is the command to enable the EIGRP. Configure terminal router EIGRP 100. Configure terminal router EIGRP 100. Same command we have to write on R6 also. Configure terminal router EIGRP okay. So this is the command by which we can enable EIGRP on a router. Now configure terminal interface, sorry, now how to configure OSPF router OSPF one network 67.1.1.0 area 0 area 0 R6 router OSPF2 network 56 डॉट यहाँ पे कौन सा नेटवर्क लिया, मैंने गलत नेटवर्क ले लिया. ऑलवेज बी रिक्वायर्ड टू गो direct. We have to define here indirect, not indirectly connected network. We have to define here directly connected network because neighborship किसके साथ बनता है, डायरेक्टली के साथ. Here we have to define 50 remove network 56.1.1.0 space 0.0.0.255 area 0. Okay. Same we have to write command here for the 67 network. Go to this router, configure terminal, router OSPF 3 network 67.1.1.0 space 0.255 dot यहाँ पे थोड़ा सा 255.255.0.0.0.255 area show IP OSPF neighbor. अभी 2 में फंसा हुआ है, आगे क्या show IP OSPF neighbor. अभी एक फुल आ गया है, 2 में ही फंसा हुआ है. Will take some time. Now it is in start state. Yeah, it's full state. Now you can check the show IP route. We have a O routes, OSPF routes, right, from 467 network. Now you want to ping, you can ping also. Ping 67.1.1.0. Its network is pinging. So this is the basic thing we have discussed, how to configure routing on routers, and what we have learned from this thing is show let me escape here. Okay. Show IP INTBR is the command to check. Show IP interface BR is command to check which IP they assign on which interface. Show यार कुछ इशू आ रहा है. So IP INTBR ये कमांड किसके लिए यूज किया जाता है? जस्ट टू चेक IP assign on which interface. Second command show IP route. This command is used to check routing information in global table. Global table. And suppose if you want to check a specific route which is coming from the EIGRP OSPF, then you have to write so IP route EIGRP or OSPF. Okay. For the interface configuration, interface means tagging interface, which is connected with which interface, we have a command so interface description. Okay, but this is the command we are using here on router, but once we will go on the firewall, this command will be different. Okay, तो ये कमांड आपको ध्यान रखना है. एंड इफ़ यू आर फैमिलियर अबाउट द राउटर, दैट मीन्स द सिस्को राउटर, यू कैन इजीली कॉन्फ़िगर एनीथिंग ऑन फायरवॉल. तो मैं फायरवॉल पे इतना कॉन्फ़िगरेशन नहीं करूँगा, मैं डायरेक्ट ही एक फायरवॉल पे तीनों राउटर कॉन्फ़िगर करके दिखा दूँगा. Let me delete it. Yes, R6 I have just deleted and I have just taken a firewall. And let me फिर से ही पूरा कॉन्फ़िगरेशन करना पड़ेगा. Delete it. Yeah. Let me take a router, a firewall, another router. So the interface is actually different. Let me GI 0/02, interface should be GI, and same GI 0/12, database should be GI. Okay, and okay, so let's suppose here we will use IP 15.1.1.5, not 5, 1, and here we will use 15.1.1.2, 15.1. Oh, sorry, 16.1.1.2, and here we will use 16.1.1. This is the IP we need to configure on a interface. The IP we need to configure on a. You can draw it also if you want. Let me start all the cells. CPU will be goes high 100%. Just see here. नहीं जा रहा है 100%. तो इसका रैम के साथ को कम करता हूँ मैं। Okay, let's start to the ASA. It will take 1-2 minutes to start it. Reconnect it R5, reconnect it R6, and remove from R6. Okay, R5 is connected. R5 is connected. Let me take the separate section of R6. Yeah. So जब तक फायरवॉल स्टार्ट होता है, लेट मी कॉन्फ़िगर आईपी ऑन राउटर कॉन्फ़िग टी इंटरफेस जी आई 2/0 IP address is 15.1.1.1 space to 55.0.0. No shutdown, and at R6 configure terminal interface G 2/0 IP address 16.1.1.1 1 space to 55.0.0.0. This is R5 and R6. Okay. आया नहीं है, आने दो इसको. It's still booting. It will take some time. तब तक हम समराइज करते हैं कि हाउ टू कॉन्फ़िगर IP ऑन ASA फायरवॉल. कैसे कॉन्फ़िगर करेंगे? What is the command to configure IP on ASA firewall? What is my interface? Is G0/0 G0/1. Interface is here Z0/0 and Z0/1. Okay, so how to configure IP here? Name config interface ये क्या इशू आ गया इसमें? What is the command? config interface G0/0 name if inside IP address is whatever we have 15.1.1.2 space to 55.0.0.0, then you have to write. Same we have to define this command on this side also. But the command to define the IP address on ASA. कितना चलेगा? Enable configure terminal. Okay, interface क्या इंटरफेस इसका? G0/0 इंटरफेस, G0/0 name if you can define the name if also, like I am going to define my network, my my network. And once you will define the manually name, if manually John, we will create the manually John. And if is not a inside, except inside, all you have created the John, by default security level is default. Matlab, if you are right here name if inside, then they will directly assign the security level is 100, except the inside, right, name if inside. If you write here name if outside, name if dmz, name if anything, any name like my network, they will define by default security level is 0. Okay, but if you want to change the security level, then you can also change by command security level 100. Okay, so by default for inside zone, security level is 100, and name if is the command by which to create a zone or define a zone. Okay, once you will define name if inside, they will directly assign the security level is 100, is by default. Okay, but except inside, in name if you define like name if outside, name if dmz, name if my network, then the security level is by default defined here 0. But if you want to change manually security level, then there is the command security level, and then how much security level you need to define, like between 0 to 100 you can define here. So this is the command to define the manually security level. Okay, then you have to write command ip address is 15.1.1. Sorry, 15 dot, what is the राउटर में देख लें क्या था, 15.1.1.2, 15.1.1.2 स्पेस 255.255.255. अरे यार ये 255 बार बार लिखने का आदत, 255.0.0.0, and then you have to define no shutdown, and this is 0/0. Now we have to configure same thing on 0/1. So interface gi 0/1 name if outside. Okay, ip address, ip address ip address 16.1.1.2 space 255.0.0.0. Write command to check this thing is so name if. So we have a two name, my name, and outside we have a two John. This is name is John, my network, and outside. And for my network security level is defined 100, and for outside security level is defined 0. Okay, now what is the first command? So ip interface brief, intbr. If this command will be run on ASA, we got an error, and this error indicated interface. So what will the command show? इंटरफेस इसमें उल्टा है थोड़ा, इंटरफेस IP brief. Okay, so interface IP brief, but the exclude command is exclude include is same. exclude unassign. Okay, now till now is there any issue? You can ask me. No. Show IP route. This is the invalid command because showing here is the issue. What will the command to check routing table on ASA? Show route. इसमें IP नहीं लगेगा. Show route. Okay. So you can check here the routing information which we have in my router is different. Check here. Show IP route is different to the firewall. Different to the firewall because in firewall is directly connected with my networks. Is now define what is the basic difference. Check here. 15 network is directly connected with me and the interface which is connected is GI0/1. Arey yaar, GI2/0. But in case of firewall, 15 network is directly connected with my networks. Okay, so it in case of ASA exit instead of exit interface we have a John. We have a John. Okay. Till now you have any issues? You can ask me. Show IP interface. So interface IP brief. So interface IP brief. Okay. Now the second thing is why this IP 16 IP का क्यों नहीं आ रहा है यहाँ पे information? Yes. Configure terminal interface G0/1 no. यहाँ पे एडमिन नॉन था, मे भी इसके चक्कर में ना आ रहा हो. लेट मी चेक. शो रूट. Now we have information on 15 network and 16 network both. So what is the basic difference between the command line of ASA firewall and normal router is? अभी तक में जो बेसिक डिफरेंस हमने पढ़ा है वो क्या है? शो आईपी इंटरफेस ब्रीफ चलता है कहाँ पे? राउटर में. और फायरवॉल में क्या चलता है? शो इंटरफेस आईपी ब्रीफ. शो आईपी रूट और यहाँ पे शो रूट. And second thing, what we have checked in the routing table. In routing table, in router, what information we have? We have information of exit interface. But in firewall, what information we have? We have information of zone. This network is connected with my which zone? Okay. So till now you have any issues? You can ask me. If you want, you can write down also. This thing is very important during the troubleshooting issues. Okay. Now, how to configure IP? How to configure root? Configure terminal, router, EIGRP 100. Same command. Network 0.0.0.0 or write them the network separately. 15.1.1 15.1.1.0. okay, and the network 16.1.1.0. Same if you want to means enable OSPF, so you have to write command router OSPF 100, router OSPF 1 network command. Same command will run for the OSPF also. Let me show you again. No router EIGRP 100, same command which we have run on router, same command will be work on firewall as well. That's why we have first run this command on the router to take clear picture. Okay, router OSPF 1 network 15.1.1.0 0.255.255.255 area 0. Okay, don't write here to the wildcard mask, you can also write here for the subnet mask as well. Okay, maybe this version of OSPF sorry ASA is not supported wildcard entry. That's why if there is any issue with once you are writing with the wildcard entry, if this is not supporting, then you can write with the subnet mask also. Okay, on router also. Yes, not means this is the syntax this is a syntax which we have to follow, but this is not a rules to always define wildcard entry here. You can also define the subnet mask. In router they will directly convert into the wildcard entry. I will show you later. Okay, so this is the command to define OSPF. No router OSPF Now what we are going to do, we will use a simple configuration of EIGRP in all the practical, or we will use either default route for the all the practical, and we will perform the practical. And what is my first practical is, let me clear. This is my firewall. This is my router. This is my router. All are connected, IP are assigned, route is configured. Means routing is configured between all. Okay. Now, what we will do, we can check on firewall. We have a neighborship of this and this also. What we can do, we will check the ping from here to here, R1 to R2. Is this able to ping? Then we will check telnet from R2 to R2. Is this able to telnet? And why we are not able to ping and why we are able to telnet? This thing we will discuss in this practical, because we have already discussed from higher security level to lower security level, all traffic are allowed. But once the traffic will become from the lower security to higher, they will check the inspection table. But for the TCP packet, by default, no inspection rule are by default created on ASA firewall. So I will do that practical for this. Then we will check the ASP drop and the default rules Then we will start the policy, how to configure the policy to allow the traffic from outside to inside, and the traffic which is not allowed on the firewall, how to allow by using policy. We will do this thing in the in the same practical. After that we will start the netting, then we will start the transparent firewall. Once the transparent firewall will finish, then we will start HA and context. Then we will start then we will start IPsec VPN. Okay, till now you have any confusion, you can ask me. Sure. Packet tracer, yes, we will study packet tracer once we will configure the object. Yes, कहीं से पढ़ा है क्या होता है पैकेट ट्रेसर? Packet tracer is actually command by which you can capture why my packet is dropped. It's like a ASP. What we will do, we will configure a virtual means IP from source to destination, and we will check why the packet is dropped. We will check later. Okay, no issue. So let me configure router config t configure terminal router EIGRP 100 network, and I will always use default route because we are not here to learn routing. Router EIGRP 100 network, configure t router EIGRP 100 network. So you can check from firewall show IP EIG show IP nahi show EIGRP neighbor. In the command which we have learned in uh, on router, what we have to do, we have to just delete IP in the configuration. Like suppose on router we use command show IP EIGRP neighbor, but on firewall what we have to write command show EIGRP neighbor. On router we have to write command show IP EIGRP interface, but on firewall we have to write command show EIGRP interface. But in case of firewall we have a less option as compared to router. We have a less options, but in firewall router we have a more option to check the show. Okay, but you can check here if we have a EIGRP neighbor with 16 network and 15 network, that is my outside interface, and my networks, okay, both are up, and this is my RTO sequence number which you need to learn. Then you can go and study it CCNA. Okay, but in show IP EIGRP neighbor, here we have a interface, physical interface name GI0. Okay, now what I want to do, I want to ping from R5 show IP root. I have a root of 16 network also, at check show IP, and but in the routing table of 15 I have a root of 15 network also. ठीक है, R5 के पास R6 का रूटिंग इंफॉर्मेशन है, R6 के पास R5 का रूटिंग इंफॉर्मेशन है. R5 have a information of 16 network and R6 have a information of 15 network. दोनों के पास indirectly connected network का information है. Both have a information of indirectly connected network. So by default this should be ping. राउटर में हमने तो यही पढ़ा है, if we have information of, if we have done the routing, they should be ping to each other. And how to just check? We have a routing information. हमारे पास routing information है तो they should be ping to each other. Check here. Ping 16.1.1.1. Am I able to ping? यही IP है ना? Show IP interface 16.1.1.1. क्या पिंग कर पा रहा हूँ? नहीं. Why we are not able to ping? Check on firewall. Firewall पे कुछ होगा. So ASP drop. तो द इंटरफेस इज डाउन. कौन सा इंटरफेस डाउन है भाई? शो इंटरफेस आईपी ब्रीफ. इंटरफेस तो अप है. ठीक है, ओके. लेट मी अगेन पिंग एंड चेक दिस काउंटर. ओके, दिस काउंटर इज गोइंग टू इंक्रीज. 10 हो गया ये काउंटर. 10 हो गया. Because by default any router or firewall will send the 5 packets, 5 ICMP packets. So this the 5 packet is for the first ping and second, and we have done 2 times ping command we have run on router. That's why we have a 10 packets here. And why this packet is dropped? By using ACL drop, because we have no any entry from the inside network to outside network. Okay, सॉरी, फ्रॉम आउटसाइड नेटवर्क टू इनसाइड नेटवर्क. नाउ आई एम गोइंग टू प्रूफ. मैं ये भी प्रूफ करने जा रहा हूँ. अब अभी तो हमने पढ़ लिया है कि फ्रॉम दिस राउटर टू दिस राउटर वी हैव अ राउटिंग इन्फॉर्मेशन. हमारे पास राउटिंग इन्फॉर्मेशन दोनों के राउटिंग टेबल में है, बट वी आर अनेबल टू पिंग बिकॉज हमने देखा कि ASA पे ACL कोई इसके लिए नहीं बना है. पॉलिसी बाय डिफॉल्ट कोई भी क्रिएटेड नहीं है. सेकेंड चीज हमें क्या देखना है कि मैंने क्या बोला, बाय डिफॉल्ट इनसाइड टू आउटसाइड ट्रैफिक इज अलाउड होता है. क्यों होता है? अलाउड होता है. बट आउटसाइड टू इनसाइड जब कभी कोई ट्रैफिक आएगा, इस पर कोई ACL रूल नहीं है तो इसको ड्रॉप कर देगा. तो मैं देखूंगा कि ये ट्रैफिक इसके पास ICMP पैकेट जा रहा है, बट जब ये रिटर्न कर रहा है तो ये फायरवॉल ड्रॉप कर रहा है. ये भी हमें देखना है. मतलब whenever we are going to ping from R1 to R2, when we are going to start ping from R1 to R2, the ping packet is reached on R2 as well, but once the R2 will respond for this ping packet, then this firewall is drop the packet because we have not any ACL rules here. ये चीज मुझे देखना है यहाँ पे. ओके, debug IP EIG, sorry, IP ICMP packets and debug IP ICMP and debug ICMP. Enter. Trace. मैंने ICMP पे debugging I have enabled on all the routers. Let's again start to ping. R6 पे देखो पैकेट पहुंच रहा है, R5 पे कोई डिबग का पैकेट आ रहा है, कोई भी डिबग का पैकेट नहीं आ रहा है, बट R6 पे पहुंच रहा है। ओके, ये इको रिप्लाई भेज रहा है R6, सोर्स IP 16.1, इसके पास इको मीन्स हाउ द ICMP work. They will, if we have a router, they will send echo request, and this router will be send echo reply. So once this router will send the echo request, then source IP will be 15.1 and destination IP will be 16.1. But once this router will send the response, then the source IP will be 16.1 and destination IP will be 15.1, and the ICMP type will be echo reply. यहाँ पे चेक कर लो क्यों ड्रॉप हो रहा है, ड्यू टू they are sending echo reply to from source IP 16.1 and destination will be 15.1. मतलब कि R6 के पास, R5 का पैकेट R6 के पास आ रहा है, बट R5 के पास कोई भी पैकेट R6 का नहीं आ रहा है. That means क्या हुआ, इसका मतलब क्या हुआ, what do you mean by this thing? This thing means we are sending echo request packet to firewall, and this is my higher security zone and this is my lower security zone, so traffic is allowed, and once this router will send the echo response to firewall, firewall will check the policy, there is no any entry on this policy table, they will drop the packet. Okay, एक सेकंड मेरे चार्जर लगाने दो यार. ठीक है, यू कैन चेक ऑल्सो ऑन फायरवॉल. इसके पास इको आ रहा है. ठीक है, यू हैव एनी इश्यू टिल नाउ? यहाँ तक कोई इश्यू है नहीं. क्या बोल रहा है, ICMP रिक्वेस्ट फ्रॉम माय नेटवर्क 15.1.1.12 आउटसाइड 16.1.1.2. बट इसके पास जब भी कोई ये फायरवॉल इसने रिसीव किया होगा, इसने क्या चेक किया होगा, ACL टेबल. तो इसने, इसके पास इको रिक्वेस्ट तो जा रहा है बट इको रिस्पॉन्स सिस्को ASA पे नहीं दिख रहा है, बिकॉज वंस द ट्रैफिक, let me clear, once the traffic will recede on outside interface, then they will check the ACL table. If there is no any entry present, they will not allow this traffic into this box. इस बॉक्स में अलाउड ही नहीं करेगा. दैट वाई वी हैव नो एनी एंट्री ऑफ इको रिस्पॉन्स. हमारे पास इको रिस्पॉन्स का कोई एंट्री, सॉरी इको रिप्लाई का हमारा कोई भी एंट्री नहीं है. तो एंड बाय यूजिंग दिस कमांड यू कैन ऑल्सो चेक वाई दिस पैकेट इज ड्रॉप. सो ASP drop, DROP. Okay, because we have a not any ACL rules by default. Okay, now let me configure telnet on R6. Let me configure telnet on R6. Configure terminal line VTY 0/4 password CCIE. Now let me telnet. पिंग तो नहीं हुआ बट आई एम गोइंग टू ट्राई telnet. मैं R5 से telnet करना चाहता हूँ R6 को, 16.1.1.1 को. यस, आई एम एबल टू telnet. आई एम एबल टू telnet. R5 से R6 को मैं एक्सेस तो कर सकता हूँ, बट R5 से R6 को मैं पिंग नहीं कर सकता हूँ. वाई? अगेन सेकेंड रूल पे आ जाओ, जो हमने सेकेंड रूल पढ़ा था. क्या पढ़ा था सेकेंड रूल? बाय डिफॉल्ट from first rule is by default from higher security level to lower security level all traffic are allowed, but once the traffic will returns firewall check the inspection table. If there is no entry in inspection, they will drop the packet. Second rule, by default for TCP packet we have a no inspections rule. By default we have a no inspections rules if we are initiating from lower security level to higher security level. तो हम लोअर सिक्योरिटी लेवल से हायर सिक्योरिटी लेवल पे जैसे ही हम कर रहे हैं तो ये ट्रैफिक शो ASP ड्रॉप, कोई भी ड्रॉप के लिए कुछ भी नहीं मिल रहा है मेरे पास, ठीक है। वी कैन एक्सेस फ्रॉम R5 टू R6, R5 से R6 पे हम एक्सेस कर सकते हैं। क्यों कर सकते हैं, छोड़ो, सबका डीबग नहीं देखना है, ठीक है। नाउ व्हाट आई एम गोइंग टू डू, कॉन्फ़िगर टर्मिनल लाइन VTY 0 स्पेस 4 पासवर्ड CCI exit. Now I want to check from R6 to R5 telnet 15.1.1.1 क्या बोल रहा है यहाँ पे, सो ASP ड्रॉप देखो, because we have no any ACL rules. Okay, this thing is clear now. तीन चीजें पढ़ा, क्या क्या तीन चीज पढ़ा आज, कि बाय डिफॉल्ट फ्रॉम हायर सिक्योरिटी लेवल टू लोअर सिक्योरिटी लेवल all traffic are allowed. Okay, second rule, by default लोअर सिक्योरिटी लेवल टू हायर सिक्योरिटी लेवल कोई भी ट्रैफिक अलाउड नहीं है। एंड थर्ड रूल क्या पड़ा, बाय डिफॉल्ट इफ वी आर इनिशिएटिंग पैकेट्स फ्रॉम हायर सिक्योरिटी लेवल टू लोअर सिक्योरिटी लेवल एंड ट्रैफिक पैकेट टाइप इज TCP, they will for this traffic there is no any inspection rule, by default is on ASA। तीन रूल पड़ा, ठीक है। अभी मैं क्या किया, R1 से टेलनेट, आई विल स्टार्ट टू टेलनेट फ्रॉम R1 टू दिस फायरवॉल, सॉरी दिस R2 is by default allowed, but once I have started telnet from R2 to R1 this is not allowed। क्यों, क्योंकि पहला ही रूल क्या है कि उसमें ये रूल क्या है कि फ्रॉम लोअर सिक्योरिटी लेवल टू हायर सिक्योरिटी लेवल कुछ भी अलाउड नहीं है इफ़ वी हैव नॉट एनी ACL। क्यों यहाँ पे ड्रॉप हो रहा है, ये दिखा रहा है, बिकॉज वी हैव नो एनी ACL, हमारे पास कोई ACL नहीं है, ठीक है। तो नेक्स्ट लेक्चर में पढ़ेंगे हाउ टू allow this types of traffic by using access control list, how to allow this type of traffic by using access control list, access control list बना के कैसे इस ट्रैफिक को हम अलाउड करते हैं, ठीक है। चलो बाय।